Brendan Dassey trial transcript, day 6, continuing on page 22. During the course of that interview, Brendan told you that Teresa had been stabbed inside the back of the RAV4, correct? Yeah, I believe that's correct, yes. Yet, other than the evidence that's already been testified to regarding blood smears along the back or where the expert believed the hair may have been, that you would concede that there certainly wasn't any evidence of blood spatter, correct? I wouldn't expect evidence of blood spatter. Would you expect blood spatter with a stab wound? No. It would, but you're not an expert on blood spatter, are you? Not an expert, no. Okay, during the course of that interview, Brendan told you that Teresa was moved about using what's been described as a creeper, true? True. And you know that as a result of that statement, the creeper was forensically examined, true? That's true. No blood? Not surprising, no. No DNA? Again, no. So do you believe him when he says that? Absolutely. But you have no physical evidence to back it up, correct? Not true. Tell me what you have by way of the creeper. We have the creeper, which he said was in the garage. How many times had that boy been in the garage before March 31st? You'd have to ask him that. Did you ask him that? No. Don't you think he was familiar with what was in that garage? I don't know. You didn't ask him, did you? No, I didn't. Did it seem reasonable, given your experience as a human being, an investigator, that this young man may have been in that garage before March 1st? He may have been, I don't know. I'm going to hand you what's been marked as Exhibit 129. That's the 22 taken from Avery's bedroom, right? Yes, sir. In connection with your occupation, I assume you've had some firearms training? I've had some, yes. Do you hunt? No. Okay. But you do know the difference between a single-shot rifle and an automatic or semi-automatic, right? Certainly. Okay, do you know the difference between a bolt-action rifle and a single-shot or an automatic? I do. Do you know the difference between a lever-action rifle and a single-shot and a bolt-action and a semi-automatic? I do. And what you're holding is what type? This would be, I believe that they described it as a semi-automatic. Very good. Now, and it's not a single shot, right? That's correct. Okay, if you would, I think it's on 650. On the first, when you had this interview, and it's about 3/4 of the way down, Brendan had previously been asked what type of gun it was, right? And he responded that it was a single, correct? Yes. Okay, and then immediately thereafter, Fassbender says it was a single shot, not a semi-automatic, right? Correct. Okay, now I realize that you didn't ask that particular question, and answer it if you can, but do you know why semi-automatic was contained in that question when in fact that you knew it was a semi-automatic that had been recovered, as opposed to the question being presented to him about a bolt action or a lever action? I didn't ask the question. So you don't know the answer? No. You don't know why he said it that way? You'd have to ask him. Okay. Is it fair to say that there really wasn't any sort of follow-up to determine why he believed it was a single shot as opposed to the semi-automatic, which in fact we know was true? Why there was a difference in his answer was your question? My question is, can you explain to me why there was no follow-up on that issue in order to try to, in fact, get a correct answer because he was obviously wrong? We don't try to get correct answers, we try to get the truth. Now, going into this interview, you were well aware of the forensic findings regarding the skull pieces and the gunshot wound entrances, correct? I was aware of them, yes. All right. If you know, how many times was it suggested or said to Brendan that he shot Teresa? Several times, and again, it's one of those things he resisted. Each time we asked him, he resisted. All right. So on some occasions he said, no, you're wrong, I didn't do that. That's correct. Despite the fact that yourself and Fassbender repeatedly made statements suggesting that you knew that he had shot her, correct? Yep, that's correct. But you didn't have anything at all to support that sort of conclusion, did you? Conclusion being that Brendan had shot Teresa. No, we asked him the question. Did you ask him the question, or you agreed with me just a minute ago that statements were made to him, which the statements in and of themselves suggest that, yes, he actually shot Teresa, right? Yes, we asked him several times. Okay, yet you had absolutely nothing to support a belief that he had in fact done that? Yes, we asked him several times whether or not he shot her. Again, he resisted each and every time. You suggested to him that his DNA would be on the gun, right? Yes, we did, in which he said there, if you had nothing at all to support even a conclusion or a guess, even a guess that he may have shot Teresa, Why would you present with him with those type of questions? I didn't know whether or not he shot Teresa or not at that time. He puts himself in the bedroom. He puts himself in the garage where she was killed. You expressed an opinion to him, certainly, that he did in fact do it. Did you not? I certainly did, yes. All right. Isn't it true, Detective, that the first person during the course of this exchange with Brendan on the 1st who even mentioned her being shot in the head was you? That is true, yes. All right. And initially he said, yes, he believed there were 2 shots in the head, right? Which fits with the evidence that we have. 2 shots in the head, that's correct. All right, all right. So if that fits with the evidence that you have, I guess you would believe what he tells you. What he said was correct then, right? I believe that there were 2 shots in the head, yes. You don't, that we know of. I mean, we don't have the whole skull, unfortunately. Could there have been more? Certainly. Sure. The fact of the matter is that after you go back and forth with this, he changes it several times, doesn't he, as far as the number? When we get to the torso and things, yes. Okay. I think the number runs all the way up to 10 or 11. That is true. Exhibit 128, it's a little box. It's got the shells casings, 22 shell casings. CCI manufacturer from the garage, right? That's true, yes. You're the lead investigator, right? Yes, one of the... Okay, you never asked anybody at the lab to examine these for DNA evidence, true or false? That's true, lots of reasons for it. You'll get your chance. I'm sure I will. You never asked anybody at the lab to examine them for fingerprint evidence? Pretty difficult to get fingerprint evidence off of that. You're not a fingerprint expert, are you? I didn't say I was, no. These are pretty smooth surfaces, aren't they? Pretty small, smooth surfaces. In order to load this gun, somebody has to touch those shells at some point, don't they? Probably not big enough to get a whole fingerprint on. You're not a fingerprint expert, are you? No. You have been involved in cases, have you not, where experts have testified and you relied on evidence utilizing portions of fingerprints, correct? Attorney Fallon, Your Honor, I'm going to object to the continued line of inquiry of the investigator. Said he wasn't a fingerprint analyst. Attorney Edelstein, he's offering opinions about the court. I'll overrule the objection. Attorney Edelstein, you know what a partial print is, don't you? I do. And do you know investigators oftentimes rely on that, right? No, I don't know that. Directing your attention to page 582, please. Sure. I'm sorry, 587. Okay. All right, is that fair to say that that's about the time during the course of this interview that the issue comes up as far as Teresa's head? It hadn't really come up much before that. Fair statement? It comes up here. Okay. And Fassbender states about halfway down, it's extremely, extremely important you tell us this for us to believe you. Do you see that? True. Okay, and immediately thereafter you say, come on, Brendan, what else? Right? Very true. Okay, flip over, if you would, to 589. Okay. 6 lines down, when he's asked how many times Steve shot Teresa, what's his answer? He says twice, but I don't know if he's referring to the head or what, but he does say twice. Well, you didn't ask him what was being referred to, did you? Well, he's just talked about the head prior to that. So you asked me before to interpret, and that would be my interpretation. But, well, Detective, I hate to quibble, but I don't think it takes a lot of interpretation. Look at the very first question on that page. You asked him, where did you shoot her, right? Where did you shoot her? Right. Yes. Answer, in the head. That's correct. Who shot her? What did he say? He did. Talking about Steve, right? Right? I would assume yes. Well, who else were you looking at? He said he did. Yes, I assume he's talking about Steve. A little further down, is it indicated anywhere else upon the person of Teresa where she may have been shot? Yes, he's asked, do you shoot her elsewhere? Now, when you use the term you, there's no way to know from this transcript, or quite frankly from the video, who you're talking about. Are you talking about he and Steve collectively? Are you talking about him individually? Would you agree with me that there's no way to discern to whom you reference that question? Fassbender asked, do you shoot her elsewhere? His answer, in the stomach. Fassbender then asks a little further down, how many times do you shoot her when he handed you the gun? Right? Yep. You have nothing to support that suggestion, do you? We certainly did, and the answer is 0, which he continues to resist that. You're correct. Well, when you say resist, are you saying that he is lying? No, I didn't say that. But do you agree that prior to that question being asked, you hadn't absolutely nothing to suggest that there was any truth to this statement that when he handed you the gun. Not sure I understand your question. When you did the interview on the 1st, yes, you had nothing to support the statement submitted to Brendan when he, making reference to Steve, handed you the gun. Is that true or false? That's true. All right, but nevertheless, that was presented to him as if it were a fact, correct? Absolutely it was. All right, if you would flip over to page 591, okay. The last entry on the page, Detective, would you read that question? How many times did you shoot her? Tell me again, how many times did you shoot her? And you asked that question, right? Yes. And the answer? He says 3, which is not surprising. And your next question on 592? And where? Where did he shoot her? Talking again about Steve, right? Yes. Okay, his answer, in the head, stomach, and heart. That's exactly what he said. You then asked him what side of the head, correct? Yep. And he told you he had no idea. What he said was no. That's correct. Okay, how, if at all, do you account for, well, just let me put it this way. So when this questioning continues about where the shots may have occurred, it changes, does it not? It does. And you knew that from the forensics there were 2 pieces of skull, 2 holes, correct? True. All right, and I have to find my right page here. During the course of this exchange, you had asked about some hooks or wires in the garage, right? Yes. Were those ever forensically examined? They were looked at by our evidence techs, and they found absolutely nothing of any significance, correct? True. If you know, how many times during the course of the contact you had with Brendan on the 1st did you personally ask him or suggest to him or tell him that Steve made him do something? I can't. Excuse me. I didn't go through and count how many times I made any statement. I don't know. Would you agree that it was multiple? I'll agree it was more than 1 time. Would you agree it's more than 10? No, I wouldn't agree with that unless I counted it. All right. If you would, go to page 571, please. Sure, okay. About in the middle of the page, little past that, and this is when you're talking about whether or not Brendan engaged in any sort of sexual activity with Teresa. Is that a fair statement? Yeah, it looks like it, yes. All right, you make the statement to him, and this is a little past halfway down, okay? What happens next? Remember, we already know, but we need to hear it from you. You see that? I do. And that's what you told him, right? That's true. And in literally the same breath you said, it's not your fault, right? You were right, yes. How many times did you tell him things like, it's not your fault? Quite a few. I haven't counted them, but how about many? Go to page 574, please. Again, about halfway down. Yes. You said to him, it's not your fault. He makes you do it, right? Yes. And I take it you don't believe, as a trained investigator dealing with Brendan Dassey, that phrasing things to him that way, where you suggest that if he did something, it's not his fault, is going to cause him to say he did, because you were telling him that it's okay and it's not his fault? No, I don't believe that at all. All right. Clearly, you saw on the tape what he said. Everybody saw what he says. That's correct. But you would have to give me this, Detective, that it's not just the sterile words that people speak, but it's the meaning behind them, correct? Correct. It's the intonation, correct? Correct. It's the reaction between individuals, correct? Absolutely. How many times during the course of this contact did you praise him? Again, I haven't counted anything I've said in the interview. I don't know how many times I said anything in that interview. Is it fair to say that it occurred on multiple occasions? It occurred more than once? I'll agree with you. But you don't know how many times? No, I don't. Okay, if you would, go to page 595. 595? Yes, okay. You see about 3/4 of the way down? The statement is made to him. This is by Fossbender. I think you're doing a real good job up to this point, right? Yep. Okay, and he goes on to say some other things, correct? Yeah, it's a pretty lengthy paragraph. Okay, a little further down, when we're talking about the garage, he claims to have knowledge about some things happening in the garage, right? Yes. And he prefaces his request for Brendan to tell the truth by the following words. You need to tell us about this so we know you're telling the truth, right? Yes. And in fairness, he said, I'm not going to tell you what to say. You need to tell us, right? You're correct. And you knew that this was being recorded, didn't you? Absolutely, so did he. So if you wanted to get something on this video, you knew all you had to do was say it, right? It's nothing to do with the video. Did you? You knew it's being recorded? So did Brendan. Okay, I'll grant you that. think you're a little more sophisticated and intelligent than Brendan.